Imagine sitting at your mom's birthday party, smiling for photos, sipping sweet tea, trying to ignore the quiet digs your family slips in between slices of cake, when suddenly your 10-year-old daughter calls you, whispering into the phone, "Get out now." At first, I thought she was playing some kind of game, but when I asked what happened, her voice broke. "Get out of the house." I didn't ask questions. I obeyed. 3 months later, those same people were on their knees begging me to forgive them. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before I tell you what happened, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment if you've ever been underestimated by people who were supposed to protect you. This one's personal. My name's Claire Bennett. I'm 42 years old, a nurse practitioner in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm a single mom to my daughter, Lila, 10 years old, whip smart, too observant for her own good sometimes. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. I was the middle child, wedged between my golden boy older brother, Ethan, and my younger sister, Savannah, who was the baby everyone coddled. I was the responsible one, which sounds like a compliment, but in my family, it was just another word for the one who can be ignored. You know the type of dynamic. Ethan could crash a car and get a brand new one the next week. Savannah could fail every class, and my mom would sigh about how creative she is. I could work 2 jobs to pay my way through nursing school and hear nothing but, "That's nice, Claire." The night of my mom's birthday, I told myself I'd go, smile, and get through it. Mom was turning 68, and the party was at her house, a little brick ranch on the edge of town. It smelled like the same cinnamon vanilla candles she's burned since I was a teenager. Ethan was already there when I arrived, in his Carolina Panthers jersey, holding court in the kitchen with a beer in hand. Savannah floated in a few minutes later, fashionably late, as always, wearing a sundress that probably cost more than my rent. "Claire," Mom smiled when she saw me, but it was that polite kind of smile, like I was a distant neighbor dropping off a casserole. She hugged Lila longer than she hugged me. I told myself not to take it personally. I always told myself that. We sat down for dinner, ham, green beans, deviled eggs, the usual Southern spread. I barely got 2 bites in before Ethan started in on me. "So, Claire, still working those double shifts at the clinic, or are you finally going to get yourself a real job?" It was a joke, apparently. Everyone chuckled. "Being a nurse practitioner is a real job," I said lightly, forcing a smile. Savannah chimed in. "Well, you know what he means. You're smart, but you've always been so safe. You could be doing so much more." I felt Lila's eyes on me from across the table. She hates when people talk down to me. The conversation shifted after that, but the digs kept coming in little ways. Savannah talking about the cute little apartment I have. Translation, not a house. Ethan bragging about his vacation to Aruba, then asking if I'd ever been out of the country. Mom telling Lila how fun it must be to have such a laid-back mom who doesn't worry too much about appearances. I chewed my food slowly, smiling when I was supposed to, nodding along, but underneath my stomach was twisting. After dinner, Savannah pulled out her phone to show Mom some big news. It was a video, grainy, shaky, of her boyfriend proposing. Mom squealed, Ethan clapped, everyone leaned in. Nobody noticed that I was the only one still sitting at the table. I excused myself to the porch for some air. The night was humid, the kind of North Carolina summer heat that makes the air feel heavy. I could hear laughter through the screen door. I told myself to just ride it out. That's when my phone buzzed. Lila. "Mom?" Me. "Hey, kiddo. You okay?" Lila, whispering. "Get out. Now." I froze. "Lila, what?" Her voice cracked. "Get out of the house." She didn't sound scared, like a kid in trouble. She sounded urgent, like she knew something I didn't. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" I whispered. "I can't say. Just please trust me. Leave right now." My skin prickled. I glanced through the porch screen at the warm yellow light of the kitchen. My family was laughing, passing cake around. Nothing looked out of place. But Lila's voice, God, that voice, it cut right through me. I didn't ask more questions. I walked back in, grabbed my purse from the counter. "Everything okay?" Mom asked. "I have to go," I said. My voice sounded steady, but inside I was buzzing. Ethan smirked. "Work emergency?" Something like that. Nobody followed me out. Nobody asked why Lila and I left without saying goodbye. In the car, Lila buckled herself in without a word. The street lamps cast long shadows over her face. "Okay," I said softly. "What happened?" She shook her head. "Not yet." "Not yet! Lila!" Her little hands gripped the seatbelt strap. "You'll find out, Mom. Just not now, please." I should have pressed her. I should have demanded an answer. But something about the way she was holding herself, like a tiny soldier, made me just drive. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the room. My phone stayed dark. No calls from Mom, no texts from Ethan or Savannah. The silence felt intentional. Then, right when I'd started to convince myself maybe it was nothing, 3 months later, they showed up at my door. And they were begging me to forgive them.
When I opened the door that morning, I almost didn't recognize them. My mom was standing there in her pale blue cardigan, but her face was drawn, lips pressed tight. Ethan was beside her, wearing the same Panthers cap from the birthday party, but he looked smaller somehow. And Savannah, perfect, untouchable Savannah, had mascara streaks down her cheeks. I stood in the doorway in my fleece robe, clutching my coffee like a shield. "Claire," Mom started, her voice thin, we need to talk." Now, here's the thing. My family never needs to talk. They gossip. They send passive-aggressive texts. They imply. But to show up uninvited early on a Saturday, that wasn't their style. "Is everything okay?" I asked flatly. Ethan shifted his weight. "Not really." Lila, still in her pajamas, padded into the living room behind me, clutching her stuffed fox. When she saw them, her body went rigid. She didn't say a word, just stood there, watching. Mom noticed it too. "Lila, sweetheart, why don't you go to your room? This is between the adults." I felt my jaw tighten. "She stays." They looked at each other like they'd practiced this moment and just had their script shredded. Savannah finally blurted it out. We owe you an apology." I actually laughed. "For what? The snide comments? The birthday party cold shoulder? Or do I need to pick from a longer list?" Her lip trembled. "For everything." Ethan added, "You don't understand, Claire. We didn't know." "Didn't know what?" I cut in. Mom spoke quietly, almost like she was afraid of her own voice. What Lila saw. That sentence sucked the air out of the room. I turned to my daughter. She was staring at the carpet now, her little fox pressed against her chin. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "are you ready to tell me?" She nodded once. "Go ahead." Her voice was so soft, I had to lean in. "At Grandma's party, I went to the kitchen to get more lemonade. Nobody saw me, but I heard them." "Who?" She swallowed. "Uncle Ethan, Aunt Savannah, Grandma." My mom flinched at her own name. "They were in the corner, talking real quiet. Uncle Ethan was saying how I'd be better off living with Aunt Savannah, that you were too busy working all the time to take care of me." My stomach dropped. "They said that?" Lila nodded. "Then Aunt Savannah said maybe they could make it official. She used a word I didn't understand, something like Custody? I felt heat rising in my chest. Custody? They'd been talking about taking my daughter. They didn't see me, Lila went on, her voice trembling now. I hid by the fridge. But then Grandma said something like, well, if we can just prove she's not a fit mom, it'll be easier. And they laughed. She sniffled, hugging the fox tighter. That's when I called you. I didn't want to stay there. I just stared at them, my own family, standing in my doorway like repentant children. Is this true? I asked, my voice low. Ethan's face turned red. We were worried about her, Claire. You're always working. To provide for her, to keep a roof over her head while you're out buying boat shoes and IPAs. Savannah's mascara was smudging again. It wasn't like that. I just thought maybe I could give her more stability. More stability? I laughed bitterly. You can't even keep a houseplant alive. Mom finally spoke. Claire, it was a mistake. We shouldn't have talked about it that way. We just thought maybe you were stretched too thin. You thought you could take my kid, I said, each word sharp enough to cut. No, Mom insisted. We never. Yes, you did. You sat there in your kitchen eating birthday cake and planned how to rip the one good thing in my life away from me. And you were going to smile in my face while you did it. Ethan muttered, we were looking out for her. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so Lila wouldn't hear the edge of rage in it. You were looking out for yourselves, because it's easier to play hero than admit you've been lousy family to me for years. For a moment, nobody said anything. The clock in my living room ticked too loudly. Then Mom sighed. We're here because we want to make it right. I stared at her. Make it right? How do you make it right after that? She fidgeted with her cardigan sleeves. We could spend more time together, help out with Lila, no strings attached. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about guilt. This was about image. Something had happened, something I didn't know yet, that made them need me to forgive them, and they wanted it fast. Why now? 3 months of silence and suddenly you're at my door? Ethan looked at Mom. Mom looked at Savannah. Savannah's eyes darted to the floor. We realized how wrong we were. No, I said slowly. Something happened. And whatever it is, it's got you desperate. They froze like I'd caught them in a police lineup. I let the silence stretch. In my head, pieces were starting to line up. My family didn't do remorse. They did damage control, which meant, what aren't you telling me? I asked. Nobody answered. Fine, I said, stepping back from the door. You want to make it right? You start by telling me the truth. All of it. And until then, I motioned toward the driveway, you can leave. Savannah's mouth opened, closed. Ethan muttered something under his breath. Mom just looked at me, this sad, pinched expression on her face, like I'd turned into a stranger overnight. They walked away without another word. Lila came up beside me, watching them go. Are they mad? She asked. I put an arm around her. Probably, but that's not our problem. That night, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. A woman's voice, shaky, urgent, came through. Is this Claire Bennett? Yes? I think we need to meet. It's about your family and something they did. You don't know me, but you need to hear this.
The woman on the phone told me her name was Linda Rayburn. She was calm, but there was an edge in her voice. The same tone I've used when telling patients something serious, but not trying to scare them. I don't know if you're aware, she began, but your mother and siblings, they've been in a bit of legal trouble. I sat up straighter. Legal trouble? Over what? She hesitated. I work for the county clerk's office. I probably shouldn't be calling, but I know what they tried to do to you, and I think you deserve to know how it backfired. Linda explained that, Shortly after my mom's birthday, my family filed a petition, an actual legal motion, claiming I was an unfit parent and that custody of Lila should be transferred to Savannah. I could feel my pulse in my ears. They never served you the papers, Linda said, because the judge dismissed it almost immediately. No grounds. But here's the thing. They didn't just file it quietly. They backed up their claim with falsified evidence. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of evidence? She said, they submitted a notarized statement claiming you'd been reported for neglect at your clinic job. Only problem is, I could hear the faint smile in her voice, we checked. There's no record. They forged it. And in this state, that's a felony. The room seemed to tilt. So, they're being investigated, yes. And if they're convicted, they're looking at fines, maybe even jail time. I heard Ethan's lawyer is already trying to negotiate a plea. I sat there, the phone warm against my cheek, trying to process the fact that my own blood had put my name in a court file, like I was some stranger they needed to take down. Why tell me? I asked quietly. Linda exhaled. Because I've seen too many people get railroaded by their own families and never know the truth. You've got a right to hear it from someone who's not feeding you a line. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the house. And then something shifted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was clear. Over the next week, I called a lawyer, someone I trusted, from a patient referral. We went through the court documents, every forged page, every fake allegation. My attorney's eyes widened when she saw the depth of their fabrication. She said, this isn't just petty, it's malicious. And frankly, it's stupid. They left a paper trail a mile long. We filed a civil suit for defamation and emotional distress. It didn't take long before the calls started. First from Mom, then from Savannah, then from Ethan's lawyer. They wanted to resolve things privately. I told them no. When Savannah cried on the phone saying she'd only gone along with it because Mom and Ethan convinced her, I reminded her she was 35 years old, not a hostage. When Ethan tried to intimidate me, telling me I'd regret airing family laundry in court, I told him I'd been doing laundry since I was 12 and I wasn't scared of a little more soap and water. The day of the first hearing, they all showed up looking like they'd aged 10 years. Mom's cardigan sleeves were stretched from her constant fidgeting. Savannah's hair was flat, no perfect waves this time. Ethan kept cracking his knuckles like a kid caught with stolen candy. My lawyer laid it all out for the judge. The false statements, the forged notary seal, the outright lies about my parenting. Linda's testimony as a clerk was the final nail, calm, precise, and devastating. The judge didn't even bother hiding his disgust. He said, this is one of the most egregious abuses of the court's time I've seen in years. And to direct it at a member of your own family? Shameful! In the end, they were fined heavily. Ethan and Savannah took plea deals to avoid jail, but were slapped with criminal records. Mom escaped charges due to her age and limited direct involvement, but her reputation in our small town was scorched. The civil suit? I won. Enough money to pay off my car, set up a college fund for Lila, and take a long overdue trip with her to the Outer Banks. Here's the part I didn't expect. After the dust settled, I felt lighter. Not triumphant in a dance on their graves kind of way, just free. For years, I'd been the family's afterthought, the reliable one they could mock and lean on in the same breath. But standing in that courtroom, telling the truth out loud, I realized I didn't need their approval. I never had. Mom tried to reach out a few months later, left a voicemail saying she missed me, that family should stick together. I deleted it without listening to the rest. Lila's thriving now, playing soccer, getting straight A's, sleeping easy at night. Sometimes she asks about grandma or her aunt and uncle, but I keep my answer simple. Some people make bad choices. That's on them, not us. And me? I still work at the clinic, still wear my same navy scrubs, still bring home takeout on Fridays. But there's a difference now. I don't shrink myself to fit their version of me. I don't explain my worth to anyone. Because the truth is, I won. And not just in court. I won my peace back. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who can hurt you the most. But when you finally stand up, tell the truth, and refuse to back down, that's when you take your life back. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't payback. It's proving you're stronger than they ever imagined. If you've been through something like this, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more tales where justice finally comes home.